My sister-in-law pulled up to my front steps on a Tuesday evening, with her car already idling at the curb, and my 9-year-old nephew standing on the driveway, holding a backpack that looked barely half full. I watched from the window as she popped the trunk, lifted out a single canvas bag, and set it on the pavement without once looking at him. When I opened the door, she was already halfway back to the driver's side. She paused just long enough to say it. "Don't make any big promises to him. Kids are resilient. He'll adjust to whatever comes next." Then she got in, put the car in drive, and was gone before I could even ask what she meant. Lucas stood at the bottom of my front steps in the October cold, his backpack hanging off one shoulder, a worn stuffed animal tucked under his arm. It was a little plush beaver his dad had given him years ago. The kind of thing kids usually outgrow, but he'd carried everywhere since my brother passed. He didn't cry. He didn't say anything right away. He just looked up at me with eyes that were too still for a 9-year-old. And something about that stillness scared me more than any amount of crying would have. "My name is Amber. I'm 33 years old, and I work in healthcare administration at a hospital north of Toronto. My brother, Jamie, died 18 months ago from a cardiac event. He was 41. He was healthy, or so we thought. He was also the kind of person who planned ahead. He'd made a will, established a trust, and made sure that everything he owned would go to Lucas when he turned 19. The house in Barrie, the savings, all of it. He'd named Christine as estate trustee when they were still together, before things got complicated between them in the last year of his life. I don't think he anticipated dying so soon. I don't think any of us did. After Jamie died, Christine became Lucas's legal guardian by default. I had concerns from the beginning, but I told myself I was grieving and projecting. I told myself she was Lucas's stepmother, and that whatever her flaws were, she loved him in her way. I invited them both for dinners. I kept in contact. I tried. And Christine was always polite enough to my face, always sending Lucas for holidays, always texting when I asked how he was doing. But when she dropped him off that Tuesday and said what she said, I knew something was very wrong. I brought Lucas inside and made us both hot chocolate. He sat at my kitchen table with his hands wrapped around the mug and didn't speak for a long time. I didn't push him. I just let him sit there, and I sat across from him, and after a while he reached into the inside pocket of his jacket. The small zipper pocket, the one most kids stuff candy wrappers into, and pulled out a phone. It was his dad's old phone. The screen was cracked on one corner, the case scuffed from years of use. Lucas set it on the table between us and looked at me. "She doesn't know I know the password," he said quietly. "Dad told it to me. He said if anything ever felt wrong, I should look at it." I stared at him. "Lucas, how long have you had this?" 3 weeks. He pushed it toward me. "I've been waiting for a time I could show someone." The password was Lucas's birthday, the way fathers do. I typed it in and the messages were already open, a thread between Christine and a contact saved only as DF. I read slowly at first, then faster. By the third scroll, I set the phone down and pressed my palm flat against the table to steady myself. Christine and this person had been negotiating for months. The house in Barrie. The house my brother had bought before Lucas was born. The one Lucas had grown up in. The one worth somewhere around $640,000 on the current market. They had a deal. $420,000, private sale, no listing, no competing offers. The kind of number that only makes sense when the buyer and seller have an arrangement that has nothing to do with the actual value of the property. And at the bottom of the thread, a date. Thursday. 2 days away. Notary appointment confirmed. DF had sent an emoji, and Christine had sent one back. I put Lucas to bed in my spare room and sat in my kitchen until almost midnight. My hands wouldn't stop trembling. I kept picking up my phone and putting it back down, trying to think clearly. My brother had left everything in a trust for his son. I knew that much. What I didn't know, what I had never thought to look into, because I assumed the legal protections were simply there, functioning, untouchable, was how easily someone could exploit them if they were motivated and if no one was watching closely enough. At midnight, I called James. James Okonkwo was the lawyer who'd handled Jamie's estate from the beginning. I'd spoken to him once or twice in the months after Jamie died. Mostly about paperwork. Mostly brief. I had never called him at midnight before. He answered on the third ring, sounding like I'd woken him. But when I started explaining, he became very alert very quickly. He let me talk. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment, and then he said, "Send me the screenshots, all of them. And don't contact Christine. Don't tip her off. Act normal if she reaches out." I asked him if what she was doing was illegal. The trust document prohibits the sale of any estate property before Lucas reaches majority without court approval and without the consent of a designated family guardian, he said. There's no court approval here. There's no family guardian consent. What she's planning to do on Thursday is fraud. And depending on the relationship between her and this buyer, it may be much more than that. We stayed on the phone for almost 2 hours. By the time I went to bed, James had already sent an email to his firm and was preparing to file an emergency motion to halt the sale. The next morning, Christine sent me a text. "Breezy short, how's my boy?" She'd sent a little sun emoji. I sat in my car in my own driveway for 5 minutes before I typed back. "He's great, we made pancakes." I put a smiley face at the end. I stared at it for a long moment before I hit send. She replied with a thumbs up and nothing else. That afternoon was the hardest part. Lucas and I were sitting at my kitchen table, going through the photographs on his dad's phone. James had asked me to document which images and messages showed Christine's involvement and which showed the timeline. When Christine video called, my laptop was open in front of me with James's email thread and a PDF of the trust document pulled up. I had maybe 2 seconds. I tilted the laptop screen away, angled it toward the wall, and answered the call. "Hey," I said. My voice came out level, I don't know how. "Hey, just wanted to see his face." She smiled at the camera, easy and relaxed. "Hey, buddy." Lucas looked at the screen. He looked at me first. Just a flicker, the briefest check. And then he looked at the screen and said hi to his stepmom in a perfectly ordinary voice. I sat across the table from my 9-year-old nephew and watched him do the hardest thing I'd ever seen a child do, which was act completely normal. And I felt something solidify in my chest that has never really softened since. We talked for 4 minutes. I told her we were thinking of going to the waterfront the next day. She said that sounded nice. She said she'd be back sometime Friday. She asked if he was eating okay, and I said yes. She said great, and then the call ended, and I sat there with my hand on the edge of the table for a long time. James called me at 8 that evening. The emergency motion had been filed. He had also contacted the Ontario Children's Lawyer's Office, because in cases involving a minor's estate assets, they have the authority to appoint a representative. And he had done one more thing. He'd run DF's full name through public records. The buyer's name was Dale Forsyth, and Dale Forsyth was, it turned out, Christine's cousin, had been for his entire life. It wasn't just an unfair sale. It was a family arrangement designed to extract $420,000 from a 9-year-old boy's inheritance and keep it within a circle that had nothing to do with Jamie and nothing to do with Lucas. The notary appointment was at 11 Thursday morning at an office in Barrie. James said he wanted to be there in person. I said I was coming too. We drove up in the morning, Lucas with my neighbor, who he's known since he was small and who I trusted completely. The drive was just under 90 minutes. James and I barely spoke. I watched the highway and thought about my brother, and about the fact that he had trusted the wrong person with his son's future. Not because he was foolish, but because he had run out of time to see it clearly. The notary's office was small, second floor of a building on Dunlop Street, the kind of office with indoor plants and framed certificates on the wall. Christine and Dale Forsyth were already there when we arrived. Christine in a blazer, Forsyth in a fleece, both of them with coffee cups. Christine looked up when we walked in, and the color left her face the same way water drains from a bathtub. Not gradually. Just gone. "What are you doing here?" she said. Her voice had an edge in it that she couldn't quite control. James set his briefcase on the notary's desk. "We're here to ensure that Thursday's proceeding complies with the terms of the estate trust established by James Aldrich Pearson for the benefit of Lucas Pearson." He opened the briefcase and placed a copy of the emergency motion on the desk. Then the trust document. Then a printed summary of the messages between Christine and Forsyth, time-stamped and organized. The notary, a small woman with reading glasses on a chain, picked up the first page and read it slowly. Then she set it down and looked at Christine. "I can't proceed with this signing," she said. "Not until this is resolved through the courts." Dale Forsyth stood up. He looked at Christine, and then at the papers on the desk, and then at Christine again. "I'm out," he said. He picked up his coffee, tucked his copy of the purchase agreement under his arm, and left. He didn't say another word. He just walked out the door like he'd never been there. Christine stood very still for a moment. Then she started talking. Fast, explanatory. Her voice pitching higher with every sentence. About how this was a misunderstanding, about how she had Lucas's best interests at heart, about how the house was too much for her to manage alone, about how the price reflected costs she'd incurred. James didn't interrupt her. He let her go until she ran out of things to say, and then he said, very quietly, that he would be filing a full report with the Office of the Children's Lawyer and that the estate trustee designation would be subject to review by the court. She looked at me then, not at James, at me. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. I just held her gaze and didn't look away, and she was the one who broke it. The weeks that followed were not easy. There is no version of this kind of thing that is clean or quick. The courts move at their own pace, and grief doesn't pause while paperwork is filed. Christine retained her own lawyer and initially contested everything. The investigation into the proposed sale expanded when James's firm uncovered evidence that she had also been making unauthorized withdrawals from the estate's operating account. Smaller amounts, spread out over 14 months, totaling just under $38,000. The children's lawyer's representative became involved. The Office of the Public Guardian reviewed the estate trustee designation and ultimately recommended its revocation. By December, Christine's designation as estate trustee had been formally removed. A corporate trustee, an independent firm licensed in Ontario, was appointed to oversee Lucas's trust and ensure that every asset remained intact until he turned 19. The house in Barrie was not sold. It sits there now, being properly managed, waiting for him. And when the court asked who would take guardianship of Lucas, I raised my hand before James had finished the sentence. I'm not going to pretend the transition was seamless. Lucas had nightmares in the first month. He'd sometimes go very quiet at dinner, for no reason I could identify, and I'd just sit with him and wait. He started back at his old school, which meant a longer commute. But neither of us wanted to disrupt that continuity. He joined a hockey league in January. He is slowly, the way kids rebuild themselves when they're finally somewhere safe, becoming loud again. There is a shelf in the spare bedroom. His bedroom now, where he has arranged his dad's hockey cards in careful rows. He asked me one evening if he could put them there permanently, not just for now. I told him they could stay as long as he wanted. He thought about this seriously, the way he thinks about most things. And then he nodded and went back to arranging them. And I stood in the doorway of that room that used to hold spare towels and an old exercise bike, and I thought about my brother, who loved his kid enough to plan ahead, and about a 9-year-old boy who was brave enough to keep a secret phone hidden in his jacket pocket for 3 weeks, waiting for someone who would actually listen. Standing up to someone in your family, someone you've made room for in your life, someone you've trusted, is the loneliest thing I have ever done. But I did it for Lucas, and I would do it again every single time. I want to ask you something because I think about this a lot. If you found out that someone close to you was quietly dismantling a child's future, piece by piece, while that child had no one to fight for him, would you step in? Even if it cost you something? Even if it got complicated? I'd really like to know what you think. Leave it in the comments.